And I do believe we're live. Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to the Kubernetes office hours.
Just in time, Joel. Just in time.
1 second, Joel. I'm going to mute you. Joel, can you mute?
Sorry.
No worries.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Kubernetes office hours for August of 2018. This is the live stream where we take your live questions from the audience and answer them live with our panel of experts. So with that, gentlemen, please introduce yourselves.
Hi, my name is Bob Killen. I work for the University of Michigan. Both Jeff and I work for the same department. We both work on Kubernetes. I'll let him do his spiel. I don't want to take both our thunder. My sort of area of expertise is on-prem KubeADM deployments, Kubernetes networking, and diving all down the bunch of rabbit holes in that space.
All right. Hi, my name is Jeffrey Sika. I also work for the University of Michigan. We're part of Advanced Research Computing Technology Services. Yeah. My area of expertise lately has been dashboard as well as the job spec and job API.
Hi, I'm Puya Bassi from Transform. My area of expertise in Kubernetes is mainly in security and also in deployments on AWS, Azure, and on-prem.
Cool. Hi, I'm Joel Speed. I work for a company called Pusher based in Shoreditch. This is my first time doing this, so I'm not really sure what I'm going to say, but yeah, I've sort of done a lot of stuff around extending Kubernetes at the moment, webhooks and controllers. Did a lot of stuff in security earlier in the year, so spend a lot of time in SIGAuth if you sort of go there.
And it looks like we have another new person, Rahul Krishnan. You just hanging out, or do you want to participate? Up to you. You want to introduce yourself? Okay, sounds like he's just listening up. So let's go over the ground rules here real quick for everybody. So we do these once a month. We have one session. This time slot here is mostly for the Europeans. And then we have another session that's later on for the West Coast United States. So let me go over the ground rules real quick. All right, so this is a judgment-free zone. We'll get a lot of questions. They might be a little bit too basic, or why didn't you just Google that? So please remember that some people are starting from not a level.
The video's not coming.
Oh, what's that? Okay, 1 second.
Doesn't look like the video showing on YouTube.
1 second. Let's just make sure.
Oh, no, Ed says he's good now.
Okay, that's good. So yeah, as you can see, if you're in the audience, feel free to tell us how the quality of the live stream is going. Sometimes it does cut out, but we can fight through that. So like we were saying, it's a judgment-free zone. If people are asking questions and you're just like too good to answer them, don't judge them. Or maybe you can come on and be an expert yourself with us on the panel. Panelists, you're encouraged to expand on your answers with your experiences and pro tips. We're not just here to kind of tell you where in the docs to look, but we're here to share your expertise and things that you have run in production. Audience, you can help us out by pasting in URLs, so official docs, blogs, or anything that might be relevant to the topic at hand. So we usually do get a lot of help from people kind of helping themselves in the office channels, in the office hours channel. Like while we're discussing stuff, there's people trading notes and stuff like that. And it just really helps us get a lot of information out to users. So you're absolutely encouraged to do that. We have a thread on discuss.kubernetes.io, which I hope Bob will paste into the chat here real quick. That's more of a place where we're helping to collect questions and things like that. We will, of course, be monitoring office #office-hours on Slack. And when we run out of those questions, we'll go into Kubernetes users and then just start answering them live. So we'll kind of do that, and it'll be crazy and stuff like that. All these sessions are available and recorded on YouTube. If you're using this as a work resource to kind of show your team at work, or using it like as a show or a podcast, please give us feedback on how we can make the show better for you. And if you want to sit in the panel with these esteemed experts up here, these are all volunteers taking the time to come out, some time out of their day to come out and help users. So if you want to do that, it's a great way to participate, and you get a really, really cool Kubernetes water bottle just for being a panelist for a regular basis. You can't just do it once. You got to come a few times. That's fine. And as in the case of the last water bottle, they stopped making them, so they're a unique thing. We'll be taking notes and all sorts of stuff, so feel free to just start talking in the Slack channel, and then we'll go. And lastly, always feel free to hang out in hash office hours afterwards. So if someone's helped you, we find it's a really good place where you can kind of slim down. Because Kubernetes users, there's like 40,000 people in there. So office hours is a little less traffic. And we like to get the regulars kind of talking to themselves. So with that, I got a toddler running around upstairs, so sorry about that. All right, fellas, anything else to add before we start?
Let's dive right in.
Okay, so who's doing questions? Is that me? Am I reading from this HackMD document, or am I reading from Slack?
I'd go from Slack to start. The HackMD was...
Okay, sweet. All right, so we will start with Ventolin. Thanks for coming. Question, I recently had a problematic pod that was logging an extreme amount. It eventually filled up the physical node's hard disk with its log, was evicted, moved on to the next node, and just kept on going. Man, killing nodes until the entire cluster was down. Of course, proper monitoring can help alert admins to situations like this before they happen. But what are the best practices for ensuring it never happens? Is there a way to limit the size of a container's log cached on the parent node?
There is. We've got, we're running Docker as our container runtime, which I guess is the default. And on that, you can add a little bit of configuration to make sure the logs only go up to a certain size. So I think we've limited it to 50 meg per pod, something like that. And it rotates. So every 10 meg, it chops into a new file, keeps the last 5. But obviously, that depends how you set up your Kubernetes clusters and what's going on there.
Okay, hopefully that answers your question. Ventolin, please feel free to post a follow-up. Also, something I totally forgot to mention, if we read your question on air, we'll automatically put you into a raffle to win a Kubernetes t-shirt, where Jeff's guaranteed to be random script will pick a winner, and we'll pick a winner at the end of the show, and then you'll go to the CNCF store and get a Kubernetes t-shirt on us. So please keep the questions coming. Vista asks, I'm trying to set up a TLS bootstrapping without RBAC. Well, without any auth method configured. My understanding is that CSR should get auto-approved and Bootstrap nodes should join the cluster without any issue. What I'm seeing is the following. The CSRs get approved and certs get issued to nodes. kubectl get CSR. However, the join and every other command sent to the API server from the Bootstrap nodes gets thrown back with an unauthorized error seen in journal control-u kubelet.service. I'm not using kubeadmin and kubespray on purpose at the moment. Everything is manually configured. I want to understand what is happening in the background before I move on with automating. The official document for TLS bootstrapping seems to assume you've already have working RBAC in your cluster, if I haven't misunderstood something. Question, is RBAC required for TLS bootstrapping? If not, are there any extra steps one should be taking when configuring TLS bootstrapping without RBAC while leaving out RBAC specific configuration items? And I want to confirm this before moving on with debugging. Before we get to the answer on this one, just panelists, if you look at hash office-hours, that's where the questions are, if you can't remember everything I just said. So manual setup here then with TLS?
I'm not 100% sure. We set up TLS in a different way, but it shouldn't be depending on RBAC.
So we've got the TLS bootstrapping. I was just thinking it depends on it sounds like the authorization mode on the API server isn't set right. If you're getting RBAC errors back, then probably you need to just add always allow to that flag if you're not wanting to use RBAC.
Right, there might be some authorization setup, even if it's not RBAC.
Yeah, that's true.
Setting always allow would help.
It would help to sort of get everything working. There's the node authorization mode as well, which is what works with the TLS bootstrapping. So if you're using, is it ABAC, the other one? Like, can't remember what it is. But if you've got ABAC and node, it should work. I think you meant to put node first as well for some reason.
Yep. They're executed in the order in which they're placed in there. So if it's before node, it will never actually like evaluate node.
Right.
Okay.
Most probably always allow will just solve it.
Yeah, if
not setting
depends
nothing, but because it might be defaulting to something. So setting always allowed just as a as the flag that might override it.
Okay, Vista, let us know how that goes on, and always feel free to post a follow-up. Ed from Packet, always nice to see you. Ed adds a link to the JSON file logging driver for the Docker runtime. Is that related to the previous question about logging? It looks like it is.
Yeah, that was the one about limiting logging.
Yeah,
we have 2 questions above at 3 p.m.
Sure. Okay. Let's go back to them. LM, is that LM's question?
Yeah, LM and then GAC4.
Gotcha. Okay, LM, welcome, asks, question, is there currently a plan to implement a native rate limiting solution to Kubernetes Ingress?
Nope.
Nope.
Yeah, that's
That
all
said,
passed off to whatever Ingress controller you're using.
yeah,
and
Nginx does it. I think Traffic has something.
either way, it's going to be very Ingress provider specific. They might do it in like an annotation for their specific provider, but that'd be that.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a pretty easy answer. Gakfort asks, Jeff, you're writing down all the people, right? So we get the raffle right.
Yep.
Okay, good. Gakfort asks questions. When do packages arrive in Kubernetes app repo for Ubuntu 18.04? 16.04 seems to be the latest long-term support version supported in the repo at the moment. I have some information on this.
You'd be the right person to answer this one.
Yeah. I have not worn my Ubuntu hat in a long time, but I need to look up an issue for you. So, Bob or Jeff, can one of you take the next question while I search for this?
Sure. So wait, where is the next question? I think it is
Long.
Yep. So Long asks, question, will there be a command like kubectl create user? If not, what is the official tip to do easy user management and context for those users? Thanks very much. I'm curious if you mean like creating a user and then adding it to your own kubectl context.
I think
Because
it's
go ahead.
It's about creating user accounts in Kubernetes, which is not a thing because Kubernetes doesn't do authentication; it just does authorization.
Right.
And the user is coming either from your certificate or from some OIDC provider or other authentication provider. So if that's the context, then there will most probably never be a kubectl create user, and then you will need to either depend on your identity provider, or if you use certificates, and I guess this could be the context of the question, then you, or service accounts, then you will have to build some own tooling to make that easier to create.
Long, if you're listening, more information would be fantastic.
Yeah, what authentication
we could go
method
2
you're
different ways
using,
with this.
and if you want to have like authorization, maybe.
Long lost his video.
Oh. Okay. So yeah, just add additional info when you're ready. George, are you done, or do you want me to keep going?
He's typing more info now.
I am ready while that guy's typing. So there's actually an issue for this. For who's the person who asked this question? Gakfort. I'm going to put this in Slack for you. So this is the issue. I'm pasting a GitHub issue here on them making deb packages for other distros, but the title there's not as descriptive as it could be. But the devs currently only built for Xennial, and they want to build them for Bionic. Bionic is 1804, and that's the issue to follow. I do believe that they wanted to move away from the animal names specifically, so that they will just work on all release. But sorry, I don't have the exact answer for you, but this is the issue that you need to track while the release team is working on this. So hopefully that will get you at least being able to follow what the progress is on that. I'm assuming they're going to sort this for this release, but I am not sure. Okay, so next question then, I move back. We were talking about the that JSON file logging driver there that has a max size thing for it though. So let us know how that goes and feel free to post a follow-up. Long asks, wait, did we just do that one?
Yep.
We did that.
Create user, okay.
Waiting for more info.
Okay,
there.
Wesley says, hi, George and team. I'm preparing for CKA and my exam is scheduled for the end of September. What's the best advice you and the rest could be to beginners of Kubernetes?
So I'm currently studying for the CKA using the Linux Foundation training material, and it's pretty good. So if you have access to that, I would just run through their scenarios. They give you quite a sort of in-depth understanding of how this sort of stuff gets working, and I'm finding it good so far.
And if you're a beginner, maybe start with the CCAT and then go on to the CKA because it's a bit more advanced.
And the one big thing is the CKA does not, or wait, no, CKA is the one that does focus on the system stuff. I got them reversed in my head.
Exactly.
Never mind.
Sorry, he was just saying about Kubernetes the hard way. I would recommend doing that. We roll our own clusters here with our own, so we don't use KubeADM or KubeSpray or any of that. And so we effectively done it the hard way. A great understanding of actually how the components interact together. I think that's invaluable when you're coming to diagnosing issues within the cluster, and I think that's part of the CK exam. So I would recommend going through Kubernetes the hard way.
Yeah, and get yourself acquainted with like command line, Linux, and systemd units, these kind of things.
Yeah, you actually have to show them that you're typing and stuff, and they have a camera on you and everything to make sure you don't cheat. It's like crazy. I do know it's very difficult. Like workers that have taken it. And
there's a lot of pressure. I
Yeah.
took it in a beta, and I think I was the second person or so, but it was like really, it's like so much pressure.
yeah. But it is a good exam. So Wesley, hopefully that gives you some information. Maybe we could ask that one again, maybe on the West Coast time, see what other set of panels. So good luck studying and good luck taking the exam. Moving on. YP28 asks, question, has any of you worked with service catalog on GCP specifically? What's your opinion on the current state? Is it ready for production even though it's in beta, or what are current more stable alternatives to integrating Kubernetes with cloud provider services? It's a shame we don't have Carolyn here because she maybe we can get her for the West Coast edition.
In general, I would say most things that in CNCF world are called beta are pretty okay to work even in production. I would definitely test it out. I haven't worked with the service cat that much. Otherwise, the only alternative would be setting up the services manually and then bringing them into the cluster manually, which is sometimes a bit hard depending on your security setup.
Okay, and hopefully we can, I'm going to try to see if I can get Caroline on the West Coast, and maybe you can, she actually works on the service catalog and she can give us a better status for you. So that's the best we can do for now. Thanks for showing up. Rahul Krishnan, which is on video, hello, asks, what's the best way to integrate Active Directory with Kubernetes?
Ooh, I've done that.
Yep.
I'm going to look up the Tagic decks.
So if it's on-prem Active Directory, you need a version newer than 2016, and then use OIDC endpoints there. Or you have Azure Active Directory sync, and then you can use the Azure Active Directory integration, which is a lot nicer, I would say. That's what we usually do.
There's other solutions too, like you can deploy Keycloak or Dex, and they can talk to Active Directory for you, and then you can use Kubernetes to talk with them.
Right. Okay, Keycloak actually has the native integration even. Dex does it over OIDC again.
Yeah, so we use Keycloak here.
Yeah. Keycloak works with older ADFS, I think.
I've got Dex set up here, and I think it actually can use SAML to older ADs. So I think it does work in the background without OIDC. So you can do like 2012 with Dex, right. I think, and LDAP as well. So go back even further if you need to.
And I was recently on a TGI Kubernetes where either Joe or Chris went over Dex and Gangway and all that stuff. And there's actually a Gangway demo at one of the Kubernetes community meetings. So keep an eye on the YouTube channel, where I think one of the Red Hatters is going to give us a status on Gangway, because Dex was previously CoreOS,
Yes.
right? And now there's two of them. So it'd be nice to know what the roadmap plans are for that. So hopefully that answers your question. Check out the solutions and then keep hanging out. That's cool. Let's see, moving on. Leslie says
information from Long.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go back to this one then.
So it seems they're using RBAC and certificates. So basically, creating the user would be you would need to create the certificates with whatever certificate provider you have, and then set a common name or a group. The group will be the organization in the dynamic name of the certificate, and then you can map the RBAC roles based on either the common name as user or the organization as group.
Okay, and then it looks like they posted more information there with a link to a Bitnami doc. Okay, so does that answer the question? Let's see. He or she says, basically trying to roadmap how multiple users will be using as per official quote design. Will it be a lot of commands by an admin with high level of Kubernetes knowledge, question mark. And then there's a smiley face.
I know, and I've been talking to a lot of people that people are trying to build things like RBAC helpers and UIs for that. I think Tectonic used to have something like that, and OpenShift does too. Everything else is like in the making. I've built something, and some others have built something, but nothing is ready. Kind of, it seems.
Yeah. So,
I think like every group is different too. Everyone does everything differently. There's no good, one size fits all solution out there.
Yeah, we have a customer that built their own stuff, like web-based, for like requesting namespaces and users for that.
All right, we have a follow-up from Wesley. He says, I've got LFS 258 enrolled. That's the course, right? What are your thoughts on Kubernetes a hard way from Kelsey Hightower? I think you recommended him going through that. Yeah. I like going through that thing once. I went through it once, and then now I'm like Kubernetes all the way. It's like, but yeah, I recommend it for people that like need to know this for either the exam or they're an ops person that needs to know this. People deploying to Kubernetes, I'm not sure they need to go through all that pain, but it doesn't hurt to know. This follow-up question is always allowed, not the default authorization mode. My API server currently does not have an authorization-mode flag set in the command line parameters.
It is the default. I just checked, but it depends how you're setting up your cluster, because I think a lot of the things like kubeadm and that override it by default.
Okay.
But
yeah, that might be.
Okay. So definitely check that flag. I'm curious to see which installers default to what actually. Because kubeadmin will default to RBAC and all that stuff anyway, right? So
yeah, I think most of us do.
It's gonna lock it all down, right?
And you should use RBAC. Like, I mean, if you want to be secure, and using TLS sounds like you want to be secure, just use RBAC or something for authorization.
Honestly, what might be a decent approach too would just be to like use kubeadm, do like one node cluster really quick, and then just see all configs that it generates, because that's really sort of the ideal config to get started with, and then you can get all the flags and sort of go from there.
Yeah, and it does have the CSR bootstrap stuff integrated, so you can learn from that, I guess.
Okay, moving on to keep all these questions coming, everyone. These are great. Zan C, sorry, I butchered that one. Question: is there any tutorial that kubefed GKE and EKS together? Just curious.
So I don't know of an explicit tutorial in this space. Really, it's just taking each cluster and then running like the kubefed, join, as long as you have access to the same context, or not access to the same context, but have the host that you're doing it from has context for both clusters. The big problem there is handling cluster ingress. Really only sort of multi-cluster ingress is handled in GKE, or at least in the Google space. Everything else is sort of has to be done a bit more independently.
Yeah, you would need to do some, GeoDNS in front. So.
And you can still do it with just basic DNS, because clustering each site will get its own DNS name. But yeah, other than that, you're sort of on your own.
This sounds expensive, Bob. Is this expensive?
Uh,
I could just imagine things, just the bandwidth costs alone seem expensive to me.
The Federation is also sort of like undergoing a big change right now. KubeFed and Federation, what we currently have, is sort of being phased out for Federation v2. If you haven't taken a look at Kubernetes SIGs / Federation-v2, give that a look. We're moving away from the old model. Everything is like CRDs with overriding. So you have like federated deployment, federated replica set, with much more policy placement stuff directly in there.
Okay. All right. Anything else to say about Federation before we move on? Rahul asks, I would like to start contributing to the Kubernetes codebase. How do I do that? We have an entire guide here called the Kubernetes Contributors Guide that will walk you through your very first pull request and all that kind of good stuff. And that would be a good time to actually mention that we have an entire sister show called Kubernetes Meet Our Contributors, which is this exact format, except for people that want to contribute. So this shows more to like help end users use and consume Kubernetes. Meet Our Contributors, which is the first Wednesday of every month, would be questions like, I'm stuck in this Go code thing, help me. And we'll have actually developers there to answer your questions and stuff.
Why hasn't my pull request been looked at? How can I get more reviewers?
Yes, all sorts of stuff. It's such a large topic. It's an entirely different show. So definitely check that out if you're listening. It looks like we're
coming to a KubeCon. There is a contributors summit where you can also learn a lot.
Which I don't think we've posted the information for the upcoming one in Seattle, but we will definitely have one in China and in Seattle as well.
The placeholder information is there.
Oh, is it? Toss that link if you have it handy. That would be
usually the day before KubeCon.
Yeah. So if you're planning on going to KubeCon anyway, go a day early. So it looks like Long is giving us some follow information. Do we have any new questions from the audience? Let me check the Kubernetes users channel to see if anybody, we have questions in there, but I don't know if they are to us yet.
There were also a couple that we skipped over at the beginning that were just posted sometime between the previous office hours and the new office hours.
Okay, let's take care of Ed.
Also has a question, it seems.
Yeah, let's take care of Ed, and then we can move on. So Ed from Packet says, questions, what's the state of the art for mixed architecture clusters, especially running a cluster with a mix of AMD 64 and ARM 64?
I'm looking at you, Jeff.
I'm particularly interested in end-to-end testing of such a cluster with Sonobuoy, and I'm also running a mixed architecture set of build workers with GitLab. This is all you, Jeff. Unless anybody else is doing this mix.
If anyone else wants to take it, go for it. Otherwise, I will answer.
Do it.
All right. So currently, when you are deploying a new Kubernetes cluster, all of the images are, and correct me if I'm wrong, tagged with the architecture. Are starting to push out multi-architecture manifests. However, by default, if you build a Kubernetes or you deploy a Kubernetes cluster on AMD 64, all of the images are going to be specific to AMD 64. Now, I can only speak to the dashboard code base, but in a couple of releases, that's actually going to be a multi-arc manifest, and the deploy scripts are only going to refer to the generic name. Eventually, I imagine we were going to start moving towards multi-arch manifests and being able to just specify a generic name, but I don't know how fast that's going to be adopted on the greater code base. As for Sonobui, that I have no idea right now. I haven't touched Sonobui yet.
I'm looking at Sonobui, and it's supposed to work, but I do see an issue that was filed 7 days ago.
Was it by Ed?
Not by Ed. No, there's other people. It's not just Ed. It says at this stage it may be a stretch to update scanner for ARM, but definitely want to enable Sonobui proper. So it looks like that's in progress. And then Lubin says, I've enabled Sonobui to support multi-arch. I will continue to enable more. Let me just toss that issue into chat, Ed, and let me know what you think about that from the Sonobui side. And then Dims, actually, here's a today I learned. Dims posted the test for the conformance, and they have, I didn't know they had a PPC 64LE Little Indian on there as well.
Wow.
All those tests are green. That's cool.
Lots of IBM folks interested in that one.
Yeah. So I hope that answers your question, or at least gives you a bug report on where we're stuck with Sonobui. And then that links to another issue that's just generally advocating for running conformance tests on multiple architectures all over the place. And there's a long follow-up issue there you might want to follow along with. The number on that one, Ed, is this pull request here. So hopefully that'll give you, let me decollapse these links here in chat. That will give you information. Okay, moving on. While we get new questions in chat, Bob, where are the follow-ups? Am I in the document now?
Yeah, if you go to the top of the document.
Okay, so user Eve C asks, got a real mystery here. An old service that was long ago deleted is still being referenced as the upstream service in an Ingress resource, and the Ingress is still working. I could see the Nginx block is proxying with that service in the host header, but no idea how it's working from there. The service doesn't resolve. There are no lingering endpoint resources. Istio doesn't know about the service, et cetera, et cetera. Checked IP tables chains on the node too and can't see any reference to that old service. So it looks like he deleted an old service and it didn't cleanly delete. Is that a thing?
Yeah, like, to be perfectly honest, that sounds like a bug.
Mm-hmm.
Would definitely need more info, but it sounds like something that should be followed up with an issue.
Yeah. All right, moving on. I'm going to skip this Calico one for now because that's a lot of pasting for me to read.
We did get another one in chat.
Okay, all right. MacBull says, I tried to compile Kubernetes a couple of weeks ago. I crashed my computer. What is machine requirements for compiling? And then people are asking follow-ups there on what operating system they're on. Fedora 28?
I've done it on a 2-core virtual machine with like 6 gigs of RAM.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had a problem before trying to build it because I'm using Mac and the Docker builder default has like 2 gig of RAM assigned to it. So I had to upload to like about 8 or so, I think, to get mine to work. Doing a multi-arc build though, so don't know if that makes a difference.
Yeah.
Jeff, you have any more info on this?
Not off the top of my head right now.
I think I read somewhere back when I was building this a couple of months ago that they recommend having about 40 gig or so if you're doing the multi-arc build, like sort of 6 gig per single build. So if you're trying to do the multi-arc, then make sure you've got a lot of memory, or do them sequentially rather than in parallel, because I think it tries to do them all in parallel.
Yeah, I'd like to see more information too if you have it on what you exactly mean by crash my computer. Because if it errors out, it's one thing, but if like it freezes up your entire OS and you have to hard redo, that seems like something else might be going on there. Okay, we have a question from the forum, discuss.kubernetes.io. I'm going to paste it in here. Hello guys, I'm starting with Kubernetes using kubeadmin to set up a cluster, and I have a few questions about the pod network CIDR and service CIDR, and maybe someone can help me understand. Are these pod network side and service side are internals to the Kubernetes cluster only? Can they interfere with the external network if those addresses overlap addresses outside the cluster? Hypothetically speaking, since service-side defaults to 10.96.0.0/12, what would happen if someone outside my network, somewhere in my network, outside of the Kubernetes cluster? I have a router whose IP is 10.111.255.254, and that belongs on the 10.96.00/12. Thanks for the help.
It depends a bit how your network is set up and if there is a NAT gateway between the cluster and the rest of the network. In general, we, especially if you're on premise, but also in the cloud, try to have non-overlapping CIDRs, and not only between clusters, but also between the Kubernetes and other stuff. So in case you want to peer at some point through VPNs or through some things that don't have NAT gateways in between, then you're more secure. If you're pretty sure you have a NAT gateway in between, then you should be okay.
Okay.
Yeah. It can still cause a whole slew of problems if you have like other things on your network that happen to be at those IP ranges, where it's just like, okay, this is the closest thing. It's just going to stay within inside my Kubernetes cluster.
Usually talk to the network guys and get a range from them, and then split that range into service and pod ranges. So like get a dash, I don't know, 16 or -8. So
in the bare metal world, the only, like, not necessarily the only reason, but generally you would, choose a cedar range if you're going across multiple racks and you have like, you need to advertise the routes to your top of rack switches, and that's a whole, you definitely want to involve your networking guys.
Definitely. They really don't like you using random ranges.
Yeah. Did I pronounce that right? How do people pronounce this? CIDR.
Cedar.
Cedar? Is that how you say it? I thought it was cider.
Like the drink.
Cider.
All good.
Yeah, cider, I'd say.
Okay, good. So I'm not wrong. Totally. Perfect.
No
all right.
wrong.
All right. Let me check the channel here for questions. It looks like we're talking about RBAC a little bit. Long says, I'm heavily into rancher.com, but is there where we implement the privileges and roles? For example, is it possible today to map an LDAP user group to a cluster role and a role?
Not directly, but through like OIDC or some other method of just passing it in there. It's literally just looking for, does it match this string?
Yeah, basically you would need something like DEX or Keycloak in between that maps the group to the group in OIDC, and then you auth that, and you can use all groups as the group in the RBAC then.
Yeah, with something like Keycloak or DEX, you effectively, in the OIDC claims, you get a group section. Yeah. And then from there, you can reference that in your subject on your role binding or cluster role, where it says normally you'd have like kind service account or whatever it is, it'd be kind group. And then you just put the name of the group in.
Yeah, and then you map that claim in the API server flags as group claim. You can also choose a username claim. So you're not like only email and only group. So if it's called, I don't know, groups, then you can still use it.
Okay. And thanks for pasting in the links there, guys. Rahul Krishnan asks again, which docs are good to get in-depth knowledge about Kubernetes networking and packet flow? And Jeff responds with Kubernetes-docs/concepts/cluster-administration/networking.
There's a couple great blog posts that go pretty in-depth on this stuff too. I don't know them off the top of my head, but I think they're hosted on Medium. Should be able to dig them up.
Okay.
Yeah. Tigera also wrote some extensive stuff there. It's mainly towards when you're using Calico, but even if you're not using Calico, it goes really in depth also on the inner workings there.
Yeah, and are the docs back on Google yet? Hold on, I have to check. Networking. Yeah, looks like it's back. Last week there was an issue with Google indexing the Kubernetes docs, which made investigating things kind of difficult. All right, so Bob and some of the other people are plopping in links there into the channel. I hope that helps. One is Understanding Kubernetes Networking Pods from the GCP blog, and Understanding Kubernetes Networking looks like the GCP blog.
It's the follow-up for services.
Yeah. Long has to follow up, but will that work in a right intelligent way? Like only allow kube apply in a namespace, but also allow PVC in the context of PVC being cluster wide?
You should be able to define that with RBAC. RBAC is basically whitelisting. Right? The only problems you get is if you want to blacklist things, like let them do everything, but not attach an exec, because then you need to kind of, like there is no minus or blacklist. So you need to like copy the whole role that you want and then remove those two entries kind of. It's a hassle, but it's possible.
Okay, and then more links. Let's give Long some time there to.
Quick thing, do you mean PV cluster wide? Because PVCs are definitely scoped in namespaces.
Right. PVs are cluster wide, PVCs are namespaced. Right? Because usually if you want to do access control on persistent volumes, you might want to pre-create the volumes and then you and even the claims, and then you can have an ACL on the claim in a namespace.
That's literally exactly what I was going to suggest.
Yep, and then they post back, grateful. That exec is what I was going to ask because of the exec feature, NEO 1.11.1. And then they're typing, so we'll come back to them. While I post in this very, very general question here, I think some of you in the channel might want to go into this post on the forum and then post your opinions. I work a lot with ETSI, NFV, NFV-O, and automation for applications running in VMs. Cloud native requirements for telco cloud triggers the need to have containers. Some vendors are considering containers over VMs to support containers, but without changing the orchestration for VMs, NFV-O, and all integration with BEs. My question is a bit naive. In case we have apps running on containers and apps running on VMs, how do we coexist the different orchestrators without overloading the IT backend? LCM scaling in and out is easy to understand. The need to have two orchestrators managing their own environment. But from telco's IT perspective, if there's a need to have VMs and containers and NFV-O, Kubernetes, how to minimize the impact and integration requirements with IT backends with multiple orchestrators handling automation?
This one, there isn't really a good straight answer for this question. A lot of the automation tools out there for sort of handling both are really for automating the provisioning of Kubernetes on top of virtual machines or bare metal, and not sort of handling the application deployments sort of like across both of them. And a lot sort of falls back to like containers treated as immutable objects you can fire and forget, and a lot of the VM management side is more as like stateful objects, at least in the like on-prem world, not when you're dealing in AWS and you can just like spin up as many instances as you want. As far as like single source provisioning for Kubernetes, there's things like OpenStack's Magnum. VMware has a similar offering. Heptio has a tool called Gimbal, which will actually allow you to do cluster ingress for both OpenStack and Kubernetes. But honestly, if you're in the NFV space, it's not likely what you're going to be looking for.
Yeah, most probably you want to have VMs and containers in different environments and then just connect them. I think mixing them will make your life even harder. Trying like this, using the same tool is just because the tools are built for different use cases. It might not be the best case.
There is one thing out there where you can like Vertlet, which allows you to sort of manage virtual machines in a Kubernetes way. So if you don't mind switching over to managing everything the Kubernetes way, that at least gives you, sort of one single way of interacting with everything.
Yeah, I think KubeVirt also does that, and we do this sometimes, like a Docker container with Chemo tooling, and then it starts the VM, so it also works, and then you have like native pod functionality.
Sorry, there's no real straight answer.
Yeah, that's pretty much the most common. Like you could go to 10 different booths at KubeCon and get 10 different answers on that one. So But yeah, I thought it was interesting. I left a link there in chat if people have opinions on this, because I'm sure people do. So feel free to just go back in there and type them up on the forum if you'd like. B. Schmidt from Kubernetes-users asks, does anyone have a link for me regarding how to change the default space path for pods images on a bare metal cluster? I simply want to move varlib /lib/docker and varlib kubelet to an external USB disk on every node.
So for handling Docker and Kubernetes, there are different flags, but essentially it's just daemon flags on each one. For Docker, it's like -- data -root and like -- exec root. And then I know for kubelet, it's like -- root-dir. But that should let you like move them wherever. Or be careful moving them onto a like USB stick or something like that.
Yeah, I found this external USB disk
very risky.
Yeah, I would not. I mean, this could be this could be a Pi cluster probably, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could also just mount it before you start the Docker service. So if you mount the disk at varlib docker before you start the Docker service, that should also work. That's how we mount like encrypted volumes in clouds as the Docker directory, for example.
Okay, good to know. Let's see. James Laverax asks in Kubernetes-users, for self-hosted Kubernetes clusters, are there any suggestions for minimum number of nodes? Example, 3 times masters, 3 workers, general hardware requirements. I'm aware that the worker nodes really need to be tailored to whatever it is you're running on the cluster, but what about the master nodes? If they just run the master components like etcd, then are there minimum hardware requirements anywhere?
There is somewhere in docs where we have instance sizes, I think, in the different clouds as recommendations for
Let me find
like sections of number of nodes, like below 10, below 100. I always have to search for like 20 minutes to find it. It's never remember where it is, but there is, it is somewhere. And you can just like, if you're not on the cloud, you can still just look at the instance sizes and say, okay, an M3 large is like 2 CPUs or 2 threads and 8 gigs of RAM, roughly.
I found it and I put it in the channel. It's /doc/setup/cluster-large. And it was the first hit when I typed instance sizes Kubernetes into Google. So let's see what they say here. Up to 5,000 nodes. Scroll, it has all the instance sizes. So for example, in GCE, you're gonna need to increase the quotas. It talks about etcd instance sizes here. And then you finally get the size of master and master components. So N1-standard ones. But if you have between 250 and 500 nodes, you want N1-standard 16. More than 500 nodes, N1-standard 32. And the sizes for AWS are between 1 and 5 nodes, M3 mediums. And for more than 500 nodes, C4 8x larges. So it has little ranges here depending on how big your cluster is, on what the instance sizes should be.
It further depends a bit on your workloads. So if you have stuff that is hammering the API, like CI stuff, then I would definitely recommend a bigger one than what is recommended there. Because it's not only the nodes, node numbers, but also the workloads that could hammer the API.
Right.
Not a churn.
Yeah.
The other thing is like, depending on what you're doing, you might honestly not need, to run your masters in HA.
Yeah, definitely.
If the workers and all that will continue to run and all that, if the master goes down, the control plane goes down for like a couple minutes, it's no big deal.
Just take care of etcd persistence.
Yep.
So like running even a single etcd with persistent storage might be also operationally much more stable and easy than running like a full cluster, especially if you don't know how to handle etcd that much. If you don't have like 1, 2, 3 years experience in that, it's actually harder to run a cluster than a single node. And I think GKE also runs that. I think they run persistent disks with single etcds.
This page does not say.
That I don't know.
But for bare metal, you could just map out the instance types to to what that cloud provider says you get, and then double it, right? That's the key.
Or half it if you're like on really high performance machines with like huge new i9s or something.
Yeah, but this is really lots of interest on this page afterwards about add-on resources, what that takes and stuff. So definitely a good page to look at. I'm definitely interested in seeing how this runs with any Threadrippers, but that's a topic for a different day. Okay, checking for new questions here. We're still talking the RBAC user stuff here in the group. Let's look at users again. We probably got time for one or two questions. Let me just, one or two questions before we wrap up. Let's see, let me just look at users one more time, and then we'll go into the outro. Let's see, what are people talking about in users? Ambassador and Istio, okay. Long says, thanks tons, very helpful to know all this. Thanks very much for showing up and for all your follow-up questions. I like it when we have someone stay the whole show. We kind of tease out the whole thing. So this was definitely the RBAC episode. So with that, let's wrap it up with the raffle.
I'm getting to it right now.
So thanks those of you that asked questions. We're going to do the raffle real quick, see who wins the t-shirts, and then we will move on. So while he's doing that, I'd like to thank the following companies for supporting the community with developer volunteers. That's the people on this panel. That's Giant Swarm, Heptio, StockX, Packet.net. Thanks, Ed, as always, for helping out with the notes and just in general being absolutely useful all the time. And you can definitely check out Packet.net for some great bare metal servers there. Pusher, that's pusher.com. That's where Joel, very first day, welcome. Red Hat, Weaveworks, and the University of Michigan Wolverines. Are we ready? Are we ready with the raffle? Who won the t-shirt for today? Oh, real quick, KubeCon is coming up in both Shanghai and Seattle. So make sure you check the cncf.io website for things like that. You can usually find the panelists here and other wonderful people who are willing to help you out. And
I PM'd it to you, by the way.
Oh, you PM me it. Okay. You're not just going to announce it? Okay.
Oh, I mean, I certainly can.
Okay. No worries. So Long, it actually paid off that you stayed this whole time and tried to figure out this RBAC thing, because according to the script, you actually won the t-shirt as well. So look at that. You couldn't ask for a better deal. I will PM you after this show is done and give you the code for the CNCF store so you can at least rock out with your Kubernetes t-shirt while working through your problem. So thanks very much, everybody, for coming. Joel, your first time. You have a good time? Did you like it? Might do it again?
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely come back.
Yeah, so if any of you out there want to be on the panel, the commitment is 1 hour a month. We have both European times and West Coast times. And we're generally flexible on when we get people on. If you're an expert in something, or if you just did a brutal deployment at work and you want to share some tips, tricks, all that kind of stuff, we'd love to have you. This is just our generic, have Kubernetes experts on and we answer questions and everyone has a great time. So with that, we're going to wrap up. We are going to do the West Coast edition in a few hours. And as always, feel free to subscribe to us on YouTube so you get a notification when we publish these. These go live about an hour after the live stream, and then we will see everyone in a few hours or next month, depending on when you show up. Thanks.